Yeah, it's a challenge to have a presentation after Karen's excellent presentation. And as Karen mentioned, there are different dimensions, and I want to deep in some other dimensions as well. So when we look at the challenges, and if we look on what happened since the beginning of the 2000s and with the Gaza Flotilla and BDS and the aftermath now, I think we should turn and look at certain levels. One is an epistemological and intellectual development, which happened since the 60s, 70s, and there were certain shifts over time. And the second aspect are the actors, the forces on the ground. So who are those fighting against Israel, the existence of Israel, fighting against Jews, and how they do their coalitions, who is fighting with whom and why and since when. And the third aspect is the content side. So the content, the campaigns and the talking points they're having and how they changed over time. And I want to have a short dive in all of the three aspects. So when we look at the epistemological and intellectual developments, I would say it includes a shift from, to a certain extent, universalist values, human rights, to the focus of organic thinking, such as land, people, folk, nation, Arab, Islamic, Ummah. And values against the individual and the rights of the individual, against universalistic law as such. So, and this is a development which, if we look at feminist theory from the 70s, there has been different thinkings, epistemological breaks in the thinking, and the focus were different. So there were a certain time when it was about power relations, about subversion, about how gender relations are being implemented in this society, how is it related with materialistic, with the material world, what is the role of, let's say, people, how they live together, marriage and things like this. This was the 70s. Then we had certain developments, but what is interesting in these developments, that one important component fell apart, and this is in thinking like with Judith Butler or Donna Haraway, are things like what is the end, what comes, where is the basic at the end. And the interesting thing there, if it got political, it's not the individual anymore, defending the individual rights and defending them against discrimination. It becomes the nation, the folk, the land. And this is true for Judith Butler, but projected towards the other, let's say the Hezbollah and the Palestinians and the Arab nation and the Islamic world and so on. And this is also true with Donna Haraway, who found herself with the indigenous people at the end, the indigenous people from the US as the mother earth and things like this. So there is a development where, on the one hand, universalistic views go with a postmodern and a post-structural view of the world towards something which is more organic thinking, which to a certain extent has some connection with the German national movement and the 19th century thinking in Germany, much more than with progressive thinking, I would argue. And this is something where certain people from progressive left or feminist thinking, gender theory, are sharing with others in the MENA region, with some parts of the Arab nationalism, the Arab left, and also with some parts of the Islamists. what they share there when defending the nation against the West and the capitalism, how they perceive capitalism, is the organic which comes at the end. It's the Ummah, it's the nation, it's the folk, it's the people, it's the land. So I would argue that this is a very important component in all of this, what's happening on an epistemological, intellectual development. The second point, if we look at the forces on the ground and who are the people staging the demonstration, who are the actors, we see different actors, of course. So we see that there has been a change in who is fighting together with whom over the last, let's say, 50 years. So we see on the one hand, if we look back then in Afghanistan, the Soviets fighting with whatever Islamic movement there, and also looking at the MENA region where the Arab left got killed by the Islamists. This is not the case anymore. And this is a development which started after the fall of the Soviet Union, and this is a development which got a very important change from the beginning of the 2000s. With 9/11, with the second Intifada, with the Iraq War, where a shift in coalition building took place. And this is also reflected in the Doha Conference, where some of the people claim this is the beginning of BDS or some sort of, but I think the more important thing is the coalition building which happens in this time, where forces who before were opponents were starting to rally together against, and this is the point of course, against on the one hand the US and on the other hand against Israel and the existence of Israel. So from there we saw the demonstration, 500,000, 1 million in the MENA region in one country. This is something where some of the positive developments of the Oslo Accords and peace agreements changed towards a war situation, and there were huge demonstrations which challenged normalization with Israel and so on. And the people who challenged this were Arab left, Pan-Arabism, and the Islamist movement, certain fronts from the Islamist movements. And this is also reflected to a certain extent in different contexts in Europe and the US, like at least in the UK and in Spain and some other Western European countries, we saw that there is a coalition also between Muslim Brotherhood fractions and the left in the respective countries, which at least at some points the left a few decades ago, there were opponents towards Islamists. Of course, there was Foucault who traveled to Iran and the Iranian Revolution, a case like this, but many of the left, they didn't like Islamists. This was clear. But there is an epistemological shift and a change in the coalition building through the time. So in Germany, this is a little bit special case because in Germany, the coalition between the left and the Islamists were interrupted for a certain time. We know from the past that, for example, with the Gaza Flotilla, a few members of parliament from the left party also joined the Gaza Flotilla to break the siege in Gaza. But after this, and when it became clear, at least in Germany, that it was more or less a Muslim Brotherhood-led operation joined by some internationalists and Islamists, there was an interruption of the infrastructure cooperation and the interruption, at least of the formal political party stance towards Islamist organizations and also towards Hamas. So this is not true in all other European countries, and I think we may discuss this, how it is perceived now in the UK and also in Spain. But I think it's very important what a difference means in coalition building in Germany towards other countries, and why some of the aspects regarding to this topic are in Germany better than in other countries. The third aspect which I mentioned is the content side. So the question is, what are the campaigns and the talking points over time, and how this changed over time. If we look at the different activities, the anti-Israel, the organized anti-Israel campaigns, since the 2000s, since the Second Intifada, the Berlin Conference, the 9/11 attacks, the Iraq War in 2003. Then in 2005 there was the call for BDS, and we immediately in 2006, if I remember well, were the first Palestinians in Europe conference, which are the umbrella conferences with participation of Hamas, and which the German security services claim as a pro-Hamas activity, where several thousands, up to 15,000-20,000 gathered each year in different countries, including in Germany a few times, in Flotilla and Berlin, over the last 2 decades, where in some countries they were joined by different political movements, also coming from the left, partly also from Christian anti-Israel campaigners, and from nowadays a little bit more, is it closer also to Jewish Voice for Peace, but this is this we have to see what comes out there. But what we know, that those leading the main campaigns in Europe towards the pro-Hamasi stance, and which is the intersection between Hamas, the Muslim Brotherhood representatives in Europe, and the coalition building towards the left, that this is a process, an organized process, which also started in a little bit after BDS was claimed. And in Germany, at least, BDS was one of the things which were asked for by the conference in their final communique. So there it reads that everybody should endorse BDS and so on. So in Germany, this is until now the largest conference which asked for BDS, with around 10,000 participants, which is mainly unknown in Germany. The biggest one was a pro-Hamas or Hamas event. So if we look at other activities which took part, and this also means it's the aspect of coalition building, we not just have the European activities, we also have the Hamasi and Muslim Brotherhood activities in the MENA region. For example, in Istanbul for several years, there were conferences where not just Muslim Brotherhood people gathered to ask, for example, against the normalization with Israel, so-called anti-normalization conferences, or Quds conferences, where they objected the move of the US embassy towards Jerusalem back then. And in these conferences were not just the Muslim Brotherhood, Hamas fractions, there were also Salafi and Salafi jihadi people involved. So there we have a link more towards Al-Qaeda style. And this link is not only happening there, also in the Beirut Resistance Conference, for example, I think in 2012. There were, Hezbollah was involved there, the Iranians were involved, and some of the other actors which are called now the Axis of Resistance. So this is a coalition building from their side which goes on for a long time. And these are also the coordinating bodies for the international campaigns, mainly everything which is related to Quds, everything which is related to Al-IIBSA, everything which is related to the Gaza Flotillas, and some of the other things. And they are also giving the talking points, which we see every year, on Prisoners Day, Nakba Day, and 5, 6, 7, 8 others campaigns which they're running. So in some years there's a schedule when happens what and what is to be said, and when is Balfour Declaration the main topic. It's planned 2 years before. So when the Balfour Declaration campaigns pops up in the UK, this is we know before that this will happen. So if we want to see and analyze what's going on now, it's something which is a little bit challenging. So we have, on the one hand, we have the actors which were active all over the last 2 decades, and some of the people, including the leaders of many of those campaigns, are still the same. So they were for 15, 20 years, they were active. Those being with the Gaza Flotilla are now still with other campaigns, Europeans for Goods or other campaigns. This is one thing. The second is, what became clear is that militant campaigning level, and they have the policy level. The policy level is how to talk to the politicians, how to lobby in Brussels, and so on and so on. So they have, on the one hand, the militant organizations, and they have the NGO which works in Brussels. The new thing now, after 7 October, is that all of the structures, also with double messaging, are more or less saying the same. So Israel apartheid, genocide, resistance, and so on. This is something new, and this is something where I would say is also new in parts of the left and in progressive thinking, that is, after defeating the Jews for a moment, after being able to do a massacre against them, now everybody speaks out and gets excited that maybe it's really possible to destroy at a certain point the state of Israel. This is a challenge which we have to face, that I don't know how's it called, if a dog eats some meat and then wants to repeat this and eat the whole body or whatever. So this is a new development where I think we have to think a little bit what it means, like that they are thinking it might be a reality to kill the Jews, to destroy Israel, and so on. The second thing, on the intellectual level, I think it's still very important, and Karin mentioned a few points there, that we have to challenge on an epistemological and intellectual level some of the main theories and how they are being dealt with nowadays. The same is true, it's not just in gender studies or feminist thinking, it's also towards those who want to reflect post-colonial heritage or the situation we are living now. This is a very important thing. We have to deal also with these topics and also give alternatives, because it's important, it's a major thing, especially in Germany it becomes a very important thing. And on the one hand, it's very good that many cities are considering, okay, what is the post-colonial heritage now of the city, and where are all the street names, who are the people behind it, and where they got the art from, and where they stole whatever thing. This is very, very important, and I totally agree that societies should deal with it, but the way is how it's being done, and of course that at the end of the day Israel is being the universalist colonial apartheid whatever state. Regarding the actors, I think it's important to interrupt the coalition between the Islamists and the left. This has been and is still one of the major things which I think strategically is very, very important and can't be underestimated. And the third thing, on the campaigning and talking points, I think it's important to reflect on how these talking points are being used, and it should also be mentioned maybe from time to time that, for example, Hamas Hamas got a cooperation agreement with the ANC since a couple of years to work together, and that maybe the ANC and South African activities regarding Israel are also based on some other things, and specifically certain cooperation. Okay, I want to leave it here, and thank you very much.